My son cut me off after I missed my grandson's birthday. Am I the toxic one? Let's start with some context. I, 57 female, am a late-diagnosed ADHD, which explains so much of my life. It's a relief to know that now, object permanence is a very real thing I suffer from. Relevant later. And my firstborn son, 29 male, seems to have inherited his father's narcissist symptoms. His father left our family to marry an ex-girlfriend very suddenly when my children were 10 and 8 years old. Looking back, this was the most traumatic thing that had happened to my kids during their childhood. Being from a very abusive and neglectful childhood myself, I swore I would commit myself to my children's happiness, and I stuck to that. I always prioritized my kids and did everything I knew how to keep them safe and make them feel loved and wanted. Protecting them was my top priority, and making sure they always had a safe space and a parent who would never abandon them was my goal. I married a wonderful man a few years later who has been a steady influence in their lives ever since, who has treated me and them like gold, and I love him dearly. When my son was 16, he was struggling mentally and socially in high school, and since I was a dropout myself, I allowed him to quit school with his intention to get a job and start figuring out his life. He didn't. He stayed with us, living off us until he was 25. I always knew my son was a little different, and things seemed harder for him than it was for his younger sister, who was driven and she had goals early on. While she found work on her own at 17 and stayed in school, and as always just went after anything she set her mind to, my son instead retreated inwards and spent the next 9 years sitting in his room on his computer. He met his now wife during that period. Let's call her Tamara. I always liked Tamara. She was always welcome in our home, and I always thought their relationship was good for my son. He had struggled to make or keep friends in his life since grade school, and she treated him well and genuinely was someone I thought was good for him and his mental health. Now my son and Tamara went through their problems from time to time. Like he told me he was not physically attracted to her, and that she came from a very unhealthy upbringing and her mother was a nightmare. Something I could completely relate to with my own childhood being so messed up. Her mother is a narcissist with her own baggage, but Tamara was very family-oriented, and big family events were almost a constant thing in their home. Birthdays, holidays, graduations, sometimes it seemed like Tuesday was a reason to gather 50 people together. Their family celebrated everything, and these were a very big deal that required lots of planning and big parties. These events were not really part of my upbringing, as my own mother was mentally and emotionally unstable and abusive. So, by the time I was an adult, I only prioritized the kids' birthdays and Christmas holidays as a general rule. Yes, of course, there were other special occasions from time to time, but mostly I did not enjoy large family get-togethers and did not celebrate a lot of the more frivolous holidays like Easter or Thanksgiving or what have you. They were never important when I was growing up, and I put little thought or effort into those holidays as an adult. Sure, the kids would get Easter baskets or Valentines to take to school or whatever, but it was not a big deal or a big family event. I had cut off ties with my own mother many years before and moved across the country to avoid speaking with my extended family. I have never regretted that decision. After the way I saw her treat my sister's kids, I didn't want her near mine. However, it meant my children did not have a lot of exposure to them. So, when it came to the family tree, the branches were far and few between. We had a small family and had a few special occasions throughout the year. I always made sure I fussed over the kids on their birthdays and at Christmas, etc. Tamara was always invited to Christmas dinner, and she always accepted and joined us, and then spent Christmas Eve with her own family, to which my son joined her. It was a good system and seemed to work fine, and we had several years of this in a row and what I thought were nice holidays and happy memories. Moving on, we arrived to 2 years ago. Tamara and my son were together for 5 years, but after a year or two of a rocky relationship, found themselves pregnant, and honestly, I was looking forward to having a grandchild. I was excited, my son seemed nervous but happy, and Tamara was over the moon. Everything seemed wonderful. Then my grandson was born, and he melted my heart. I babysat whenever I was allowed, and was given a few opportunities to do so, which I jumped at the chance. I love babies, and he was a little heartbreaker that I could not resist. Skip ahead a bit, and I find out that my son and Tamara had got married, without telling anyone, even me. My daughter was invited to the very small wedding as a witness, and they all kept it from me for 7 months. They got married in November, and had all been at my home for Christmas, and no one mentioned it to us. Finally, my son just blurts it out as I am driving him to work one day. They had gotten married without me. I was hurt. Sure, I was not huge on holidays, but I figured I had at least earned an invite to my son's wedding. In all fairness, her family was not told either. Neither of them could explain why the big secret. They already had my grandson. He was at the wedding. So why the secret? I got upset. I didn't freak out or scream at them or anything. I cried. Tamara found out how upset I was and dropped by my house to deliver a small album of their wedding, which was very sweet, but I was kind of a mess. We had just lost our business a few weeks before we were well on our way to losing our home. COVID had done a number on us financially, and things were looking very bleak. So, I cried in front of her, and she said something that caught me off guard. She mentioned that my grandson's first birthday party was coming up and asked me how I thought she feels knowing that I would likely not show up for the party. I had not thought about it really. I had it in my head that he was turning 1 and would not even remember me or my husband being there. So I was going to make it up to him when he was a little older and at least able to recall having a birthday party and spoil him when he was old enough to enjoy it. We sent along a few presents for my grandson with my daughter when the party day came along. I admit, I did not want to, nor have I ever met Tamara's mother. After years of horror stories from Tamara and my son about this woman, she sounds so much like my own mother. I avoided any contact with her like the plague. Tamara knew this, and my son would always say things like, "Don't worry, I'm working it out so you don't have to go," or "It's cool, no one is expecting you," even when I never mentioned anything about it, or even knew of any event coming. I had never attended or even been invited to anything with her extended family before this point, and it never occurred to me that I would be going. I figured I would just have my grandson over for the weekend near his next or perhaps his 3rd birthday when he was older and spoil him rotten and get to visit and babysit, which sounded like heaven to me. Well, apparently skipping my grandson's birthday upset Tamara a lot. After the party passed, my son cut me, my daughter, and my husband off cold turkey. Cut all social media, cut all ties, and basically broke up with us all by text, never saying another word to any of us. He said basically that my health was deteriorating and it was scary, and he didn't want my grandson to get attached to me if I was just going to die in 10 years. He called our family toxic and said that I did not ask after my grandson enough. I figured if there was a problem, they would tell me, and I got regular updates and pictures from them through Facebook and text messages. I considered myself pretty well informed on how my grandson was doing. He said we were not a functional family and called us toxic. They moved from their apartment without a forwarding address, and I have no idea where they are now. A week later, my mother died. It messed with my head. Sure, our relationship was strained to say the least, but it still affected me more than I would have thought. 6 months later, we lost our home, and I spent the winter living in a travel trailer at a campsite with no running water or facilities. It's been a hell of a year. I have just recovered from pneumonia and finally quit smoking the green, which was the health issue my son was worried about. I have COPD. Anyway, yes, I could have gone to my grandson's birthday, but I had been living this way for years, and they had never said a word about it being a problem until Tamara mentioned my grandson's birthday. I had no idea it bothered her, and my son seemed to encourage the distance between her family and ours, so this text was a massive shock to me. I had no clue they felt so strongly about any of this. They never just openly told me, "Look, this is what we need from you, and here are the consequences if you cannot do this," which would have gone a long way to fixing the problem I didn't know was there. But after some research and soul-searching, I am convinced my son is a vulnerable narcissist, which explains a lot of his behavior. Apparently, it runs through bloodlines. Not sure if that is true, but the behavior he demonstrated his whole life is nearly textbook to what I read. Christmas was always a big deal to me. My beautiful white Christmas tree. I would decorate the house and cook for a week before the big day. Sure, it was still a small gathering, just 5 or 6 people, but it was wonderfully perfect anyway. Now, I don't have the heart to even celebrate, and throwing Christmas dinner in a travel trailer isn't exactly my idea of a holiday. And with no friends, it's just my darling husband, my supportive and wonderful daughter, and me. 2024 broke my spirit. So, my question is, did I deserve the outcome? I cut off my own mother as an adult. Did I set myself up to be cut off in return? My own mother was so manipulative and nasty, with bouts of rage and guilt that came with her presence. I did my best to never be like her, but I ended up being a people pleaser instead. I'm heartbroken and don't know how to stop feeling the loss. My grandson's 2nd birthday is coming up, and when I think about it, All I do is cry. So, am I the a-hole for not attending my grandson's first birthday party?